Welcome back. So, today we're going to dive into our Developing Your Phoenix Move experience. Week 1, Introduction to Self. Do you know who you really are? If someone asks you the question, who are you really? Would you be able to express who you believe yourself to be? What would you express about your current position in life or the impacting positive qualities about yourself? How do you really feel about you? Most times, we get caught up in the specifics of who it is we believe ourselves to be. We do this without facing the absolute truth of who we really are. We fail to acknowledge the qualities we possess. Sometimes, depending on the type of environment we come from, our beliefs about ourselves, our abilities and qualities tend to differ. But why? It's because most of the time we allow our environment to shape who we are. It is easy for us to become a product of our environment when we have no exposure to any outside realities. For instance, coming from a financially challenged family can result in your feeling the current position is as far as you will ever go. The thoughts of being more or having more are referred to as pipe dreams, but it's a dream nonetheless. Although the dreams are limited, one can still imagine. This usually happens because of the scarcity mindset that has been programmed as a child. Scarcity is a term defined as a shortage or the lack thereof. In communities where scarcity is not just literal, but also mental, is the place where true bondage exists. The stress of the lack of knowledge and the stress of unknown resources entraps these individuals. This bondage causes those within these communities to continuously find themselves mentally stuck within a box mentality while living in a box society. This is an example of those who are content with familiarity. The thought of change makes them uncomfortable and, in some cases, afraid. This group does not welcome any type of change with open arms. They are a society that does not accept out of the box thinkers. Think of elderly people who are stuck in their ways. These people refuse change because they are comfortable with where they are. Even though life gets harder, generally, they don't want to learn anything new. They live by a common rule that has been heard and used for decades. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I understand this common way of thinking, but sometimes it doesn't have to be broken to be enhanced. The taxi service wasn't broken, but Uber enhanced the transportation industry. Blockbuster wasn't broken, but Netflix and Redbox enhanced the way we rent and view movies. A woman who wears makeup isn't broken, yet her makeup enhances her beauty. Innovation is important, especially since our society is always growing and evolving. In contrast, those coming from a wealthy family are taught to expand and grow from their current position. They are exposed to the complete opposite, a surplus, an overflow. As a child, some are spoiled rotten to the core, causing them to develop a sense of entitlement. They believe they have the right to any and everything they want without working for it. Due to the upbringing of these individuals, some experience a different kind of stress. However, getting access to the necessary resources for whatever they want isn't as hard for them as it is for the scarcity minded individuals who lack so much. Although both types of individuals are very different, with very different mentalities coming from very different walks of life, this doesn't mean they don't share one very similar dilemma. It's the problem of not living up to their total and complete greatness. I say all of this to say, it doesn't matter your background, whether you come from a family that is fortunate or less fortunate, whether you are black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Jewish, Christian, Baptist, it doesn't matter. We all must go through the stages of dealing with our own stresses and defining ourselves. Some of us learn faster than others, and some of us never get to figure it out. This chapter will focus on the 6 principles of defining yourself. These principles represent the exact stages I personally experienced in defining who I really am. Before you can define who you are, you must stop trying to define other people. Have you ever felt you've studied and known someone more than they knew themselves? Have you ever watched someone in a situation and knew ahead of time how they would react? There's nothing wrong with knowing these things about those you allow in your presence. In fact, these are things you should know. However, it becomes a problem when these are things you don't know about yourself. It's almost like contradicting everything you believe and stand for. You've put too much time and energy into getting to know someone else, but not enough time and energy into getting to know yourself. Answer honestly. How much time and energy do you put into getting to know who you are? Do you know your own favorite color? Do you know what you like to do in your spare time? Do you know your own hobbies? Think about a date you've had. Remember how exciting it felt and how you two were extremely fond of each other. With a desire to build a deeper connection with you, they asked you a series of questions. Many of those questions were similar to the questions I've just asked. Once asked, your response followed. So, I guess that means you know yourself better than the average Joe, right? No, it doesn't. Can you remember the one question that took you aback and baffled you a bit? It took you a moment to think about your response. Either you didn't know what you wanted or you were just trying to make sense of it all. This only proves you don't know you like you think you know you. I could go on for days about the obvious signs that will let you know if you need to define who you are. But I am sure you already know what you need. Hence, the reason you are reading this book. You don't need me to tell you or to validate your thoughts. Everything begins and ends with you. It's not 100% our fault we find ourselves more invested in others. For some interesting reason, other people seem easier to study. We've been conditioned to focus more on others than on ourselves. Why do you think we know more about our favorite artists in the music industry or the petty gossip about others? We were taught to look outwards and immediately place judgment. What's more, we do this without ever really taking the time to have a decent conversation with them. The odd thing is, this is exactly what we do to ourselves. We lack the ability to have genuine internal conversations with ourselves. We fail to establish an understanding of the person we are and the person we are growing to be. We've been programmed to focus our attention from the outside in instead of the inside out. When I speak in terms of the internal conversation, I am sure many are probably thinking, why would I talk to myself? I'm not crazy. Whoever said you were, talking to yourself doesn't make you crazy. It's having a full conversation with something that's not there that makes you crazy. I can bet if you look in the mirror, you'll see a reflection. And that reflection might look a little something like you. $20 to the one who can prove it doesn't. I'll wait. Exactly. It's time to become the person in the mirror's best friend. You need to learn everything there is to know about the reflection staring back at you. Ask all the same questions you would ask anyone you are trying to get to know. What is your favorite color? What do you like to do for fun? Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Learn how to treat that person with respect, loyalty, love, and compassion. The person in the mirror deserves it and has proven to you time and time again a worthiness of your respect, even when you have been too blind to notice. This person staring back at you has been battered and bruised by your decisions, torn down by your lack of self-discipline, and mentally and physically drained by your negative self-talk and thoughts. But through all of the ups and downs, this person in the mirror is still standing. For that, you owe it to him or her to be transformed, inspired, and empowered into the man or woman you promised yourself to be. You deserve your utmost attention. It's time for you to learn the ins and outs of you. It's time to begin valuing your opinions, thoughts, decisions, and overall worth. To know who you are, you must forget about the perceptions of others. Oftentimes, we define ourselves by the perceptions of others. Many of us refuse to admit it, but we crave a sense of validation from outsiders who are also absent from themselves. This represents a severe case of the blind leading the blind. Have you ever had someone read you your rights and tell you about yourself as if this individual already knows you from the inside out? That person may say something like, "I know you more than you know yourself," or "I already knew you were going to do that." These are the people who are quick to place labels on you that don't belong. These are people that will tell you what you can and cannot do. In their mind, they have you all figured out. They will even dare to tell you your capabilities. They may say things like, "You aren't good enough," or "You aren't going to make it. You aren't worth much." Maybe you've heard someone say, "Give up on those dreams. You're wasting your time. Get a real job." Although these people say things that may or may not hinder or disrupt your passion, there is something you need to know. Those who doubt you do not know you. They don't know you like they think they do. Because if they did, they wouldn't question, belittle, or attempt to deny you of your potential. Be cognizant, be aware that their denying you doesn't prove they know you. It only proves that they not only don't know who you are, but they are also clueless regarding their own identity. The reality is, we are all made from the same source, a oneness, the divinity. This makes us all the perfect manifestation of the Creator. This means that the same oneness that lives within me lives within you. The only difference is we are simply two totally different expressions of that oneness, which is why we have completely different characteristics, personalities, gifts, talents, passions, and purposes. Therefore, when they disrespect you, they are disrespecting themselves. Whenever someone hurts you, they are hurting themselves. Whenever someone loves you, they are loving themselves. No matter what, whatever we do to others is ultimately what we are doing to ourselves. Do not take the negative comments of others personally, because they too have to go through their own journey of self-discovery in their own time. Even I had to grow to figure out who I am becoming, and who I desire to be. If you would have asked me in 2007 who I was and where I would be 5 years in the future, I would have looked at you crazy and brushed your question off. Other times, to escape going into major details, I'd say, "I see myself in my career field and happy." The truth is, I, like many others, didn't know who I was, what I wanted, or what my future looked like. I was clueless. Phoenix note: happiness is not determined by how much you make, the amount of expensive materialistic things you possess, or even the things happening around you. Happiness is not measured by people or things that place temporary smiles on your face. It is determined by your ability to transform the way you think, feel, and act. Even though I was soul searching, I knew there was something different about me. I couldn't see myself settling. If you are anything like me, you know what it feels like to come from an almost broken state of mind. A state where financial instability, neglect, molestation, abuse, lack of confidence, and disrespect have caused you to see the world in a completely different darkness. Do you know what it's like to try your hardest to fit in, but find that fitting in is as hard as trying to force a triangle to fit inside of a square? That was my reality. I didn't understand how to reach complete happiness. Happiness is not determined by how much you make, the amount of expensive materialistic things you possess, or even the things happening around you. Happiness is not measured by people or things that place temporary smiles on your face. It is determined by your ability to transform the way you think, feel, and act. It took me 6 years to finally give myself permission to learn more about me, who I desire to be, and my position in life in order to actualize my own true happiness. Checkpoint. Be honest. Think about the moment you developed a great idea that could change your life, or you came to a definite decision to move forward with the plan. You decided to ask an unqualified person to give you a qualified response to whether you're making the right choice. For someone to qualify in giving advice or opinions, they must have two important elements. One, they must be experienced in the subject matter. Two, they must wholeheartedly have your best interests at heart. Many times, we know the types of people we are dealing with before we ask for their input. For example, if your husband, wife, or family doesn't support you or understand your mission, what do you benefit by sharing your ideas with them? Maybe you feel they should be more supportive. You may have also felt they would support you because they're your family, but that's not always the case. When you know who you are and you are walking in your purpose, you can be secure in your own knowledge in the direction in which you plan to go. And deciding finally to do something you've always wanted to do, have you ever found yourself looking to others for their approval? Answer honestly, yes or no. As the years followed, I grew to know more about who I was becoming while establishing the person I desired to be. I learned my identity could only be defined once I accepted my truths. I wasn't always this young, energetic woman who knew and applied this secret to my world. I was once a mirror of my environment, a pure reflection of my upbringing. Born and partially raised in New Orleans, Louisiana, I experienced and witnessed things some couldn't fathom experiencing. Imagine being lost in thought in the middle of a crossfire. Physically, you're there, but mentally, you've stepped outside of yourself. You have the instinct to take cover, but although your mind is saying, go, your feet seem to be nailed to the pavement. This was my life. This was my norm. I was raised in a place called the Ninth Ward Desire Projects. These were rundown, graffiti-filled, two-story public housing homes. This neighborhood was no place to raise kids. Many of the people there were ruthless. This was a place where most of the kids had been raised by the streets instead of their parents. There were gangsters on every block, and almost everyone lived by one slogan and one slogan only. I'm from the mighty nine and don't mind dying. My mother was a strong, courageous, independent, single woman of 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls. I'm the baby of the bunch. As a child, I had no indication who my biological father was. This left me with no solid idea of what a father's love felt like. I watched my mother make sacrifices and work multiple jobs to support my siblings and me, but nothing was ever enough. Eventually, my mother grew tired of the New Orleans life. She made the tough decision to relocate our family to Atlanta, Georgia. We moved into a place called East Lake Meadows. East Lake was like the projects in New Orleans, but it wasn't as bad. My brothers quickly got acquainted with the community and earned themselves one heck of a reputation. Let's just say they weren't the ones to be messed with. We girls never had to worry about trouble because everyone knew who we were by the strength of our brothers. Throughout this book, I will continue to share relevant pieces of my life story. I made a promise to be transparent throughout this process, and I vow to stick to that. To understand my journey and how I arrived to be the woman I am today, you must first take a glimpse into my world, my background, and where I came from. Life for me wasn't easy growing up. I struggled greatly, always trying to silence my negative self talk. I was surrounded by an environment where negativity was the only food for thought. Have you ever wanted to do something and you knew deep down it was possible, but in the back of your mind, you would continuously play the 100 question game? Because of the preconceived notions of other people's thoughts and opinions, you start to doubt your ability to do whatever it is you wanted to do. Instead, you procrastinate and begin to question if it could ever be possible for you at all. Phoenix note: negative self talk is the little voice in your head that sounds just like you. It tells you lies to keep you stuck in a place you simply don't want to be. It's the kind of negative self talk that interferes with your ability to believe in yourself. This makes it almost impossible to take chances that will benefit you. The community was one thing, but when it came down to those close to me, my belief in who I was and my ability to be anything I wanted was shot down. Anytime I would do a good deed, it was always overlooked. The emerging development of negative self talk became a learned habit for me. There's this one story I can remember vividly. It was my fifth grade year of school. Fifth grade marked one of the best years of my life. I was introduced to the violin. Yep, your girl played the violin, and I was good at it too. I practiced any chance I could get. As I played gracefully, I felt like I was floating on 1,000 clouds. Each cloud was filled with sweet, precious musical symbols moving to the stroke of my bow. My violin gave me permission to be free. It gave me confidence in who I was. Anytime I played, I would experience a world far beyond ours. It was as if I was lost in a spiritually guided trance, one I didn't care to come back from. My violin was my refuge. I played for 5 short years. Over the course of those 5 years, I may have played in more than 10 concerts, two of which I was a part of the quartet. Yet, I can only remember my mother attending one or two of my recitals. As much as I tried to ignore the absence of my family, the lack of support interfered with my confidence, and the negative thoughts continued to discourage me. My orchestra would visit other schools to play. While I sat in my assigned seat, I would scan the audience searching for a familiar face along with all the other kids. My friends were waving feverishly at their moms and dads while I spent what seemed like countless hours searching for mine. Of course, I wasn't looking for my father to pop up. He wasn't in my life at the time. However, I always wanted my mother to show up. I wanted to feel her hugs and kisses while she told me how great a job I did. I wanted to hear her yell my name out in the audience saying, "That's my baby right there." But there was none of that. No hugs, no kisses, nothing but a far-fetched daydream that never seemed to come true. Instead, I'd sit on the bench by my lonesome thinking, I'm not good enough. Nobody cares. I'm not worth the time. I might as well just quit. As a child, I was unaware that all of this negative self talk was untrue. After almost every concert, I was forced to wait for my instructor to bring me home. I would sit there feeling slightly embarrassed and filled with anxiety. It was painful to complete every concert watching the other kids leave with their parents. Although my family support wasn't there, it didn't stop me from dreaming I could one day be in a professional quartet playing for the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. However, it failed to stimulate me to follow that dream, so I quit. Still to this day, I get emotional about this time in my life. I wanted to believe I could do anything, but the negative self-talk would not allow me to be a believer. How could I believe when I was surrounded by an environment filled with non-believers? Checkpoint. Have you ever wanted to do something, but the naysayers were constantly interfering? Yes or no? Defining who you are is extremely significant, especially if you are dealing with constant negative chatter about what you can and cannot do. There are people who find great joy in watching you fall. What's worse, in many cases, the people closest to you receive the greatest pleasure in watching your internal and external demise. Therefore, it's important to have at least one person in your life who helps you stay grounded and confident in your gifts, talents, and in yourself. Although I did eventually stop playing my violin, I still had dreams of doing something with my life. I knew there was a bigger calling on my life. I just didn't know what it was. My violin was the one thing that kept me in line. However, there are other things that began to take priority in my life, which caused my attention to gravitate to the next best thing, my oldest sister. As a teenager, I saw my oldest sister as my idol. She taught me a lot about being independent and never settling. When I was about 22, I decided to take a step back to really evaluate who I was and assess my true feelings about myself. Often, when attempting to define who we are, we tend to only focus on the negative factors or qualities about ourselves instead of the positives. For some, a determining factor in defining themselves consists of being validated by someone else. Understand, no one can define or determine who you are. Only you can label yourself. The question is never who do they believe me to be. It's always who I believe myself to be. 6 phases to defining you. There are 6 important principles that helped me in my journey to define who I am. Principle 1. Find your spiritual center. Principle 2. Have an increasing awareness of your self-knowledge and thought process. Principle 3. Become aware of your self-identity. Principle 4. Write out your awareness. Principle 5. Become aware of your core values. Principle 6. Major in the positives, minor in the negatives. These 6 principles helped me to put a lot of things into perspective. I was able to evaluate effectively my spiritual beliefs and my core values. I was also able to explore my own personal thought patterns, how those patterns made me feel emotionally, and how those thoughts and feelings affected my actions. In sharing these 6 phases with you, I hope you can accept and understand your own spiritual beliefs, core values, and thought patterns while being attentive to the many different emotions that accompany them. Principle 1. Find your spiritual center. Finding your spiritual center doesn't just help you understand who you are, but whose you are. If we had a true sense of self and if we knew the power we possess, we would all be living out our dreams with no hesitation. We would take full control over our lives and leave no room for excuses. The topic of spirituality has always been considered a touchy topic. I understand there are many different religions, and because of that, we will refer to God in this book as the Creator. When you have a relationship with the Creator that lives within you, you can tap into strengths and powers you didn't know were available. They give you the necessary guidance and control over your life's direction. The direction of your life is determined by your ability to become spiritually connected, to recognize these powers, and to utilize them to your greatest ability. These powers are the power to create, the power of free will, the power of self-discipline. It took some time for me to finally find my spiritual center. I've always believed firmly in God, but I didn't truly know what it meant to believe in something I could never see. I grew up in a family that was aware of Christianity, but rarely practiced it. However, for some interesting reason, my spirit was on a prowl. I tried going to several different churches in various denominations, and I even tried allowing Jehovah's Witnesses to come into my home to conduct weekly Bible study sessions. None of it worked for me. I still felt as though I was missing something. I was spiritually confused and imbalanced. Checkpoint. Are you or have you ever been spiritually imbalanced? Yes or no? You'll know there's an imbalance when you are constantly questioning your spirituality. Your belief is there, but you're confused on exactly what to believe in. Maybe you were brought up to believe in one thing, but then you were exposed to another concept or religion that made more sense to you. Or maybe it encouraged you to begin questioning your beliefs altogether. Being spiritually imbalanced causes you to become blind to the power you possess. The Creator gives you the power to manifest the life you want. All you must do is believe in the one who is created in the image of the Creator. You. God is omnipresent, present everywhere, omniscient, all-knowing, and omnipotent, all-powerful. While the Creator is everywhere, you must go inside yourself to establish a direct connection to the infinite power. Many people are distracted and attached to worldly things. They frequently find themselves searching for external solutions. How can you find the quality of life without tapping into the inner workings of who you are? You must establish an internal link with creation before you can appreciate the gift of the external. Many people are taught to idolize external factors when the only thing you should give that much love and attention to is yourself. Why? Because whether you realize it, accept it, or not, you are a pure manifestation of the infinite source of divine greatness. Hold yourself to a higher standard. Be confident in yourself and know that you have a direct link to the Creator through your ability to go inward. Many people speak about how imperfect they are. But the truth is, we are all perfect because we are a pure manifestation of the divinity in human form. Rather than accepting the idea that we are all perfect, some would argue to defend imperfection. However, imperfection only applies to the flesh, not the spirit. The flesh and the spirit are two totally different sums of this equation of life. It is wise not to confuse the two. They are not one and the same, and they are not operating on the same frequency. The spirit and the flesh share two totally different experiences and purposes. The flesh has flaws and can easily be tempted and weakened when it is not carefully guided. Its purpose is to temporarily house the spirit through the human experience. On the other hand, the spirit that is in alignment with its purpose is perfect. The spirit is free and carries the blessed traits of being omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. The moment you can first come to the realization of this fact is the moment you'll stop fearing your ability to live your best life. You will even stop fearing death because the education and awareness of self brings understanding of all things that were once questioned. That's why the term know thyself is powerful and carries great truths. Without knowing yourself and directing your attention inward, searching high and low externally will never lead or bring you closer to the Creator. In fact, it pushes you further and further away. You'll find yourself always searching the exterior for the answers that are embedded in your spirit. You'll worry and stress about the illusions of the unchangeable when your powers to change and shift everything comes from your spiritual connection. There's an old saying that states, "There's nothing too hard for my God." You see, the divine source within you will change your heart, mind, body, and rejuvenate your spirit if you accept it. You must be ready to demand your flesh to become submissive to the God within. The moment submission happens is the moment your godlike power will take form, placing you in control of everything in your life. For instance, the things your flesh has no power to change, your spirit steps in and alters your perception of that thing. Once your perception has changed, you will receive a still mind, a peaceful mind that gives you the strength and clarity to come up with solutions instead of remaining lost in the problem. This is evidence of the power of focusing on the things you can change, not the things you can't, because the things you can't change can become the things you can exchange. How can I create? There are 3 words that come to mind when I think of the creation process: think, feel, imagine. These 3 words are the keys to creating the life you want. What you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. And what you imagine, you create. What would you do if you could simply have a thought of being a successful man or woman and you immediately became the image of your thought? How would you feel if the mere feelings of joy, abundance, and happiness brought even more joy, abundance, and happiness? Imagine what life would be like if the things you imagined in your head could soon appear in your hands as quickly as you could snap your fingers. How powerful would you feel? When I started my journey into entrepreneurship, I was introduced to an industry called network marketing. Network marketing is the opportunity to become your own boss, recruit others for profit, and resell products or services through affiliation with a company. It teaches you the power in teamwork, numbers, and working together to accomplish one common goal. Depending on the individual, network marketing will push you to think, feel, and imagine on levels you didn't even know existed. During my journey in the industry, I not only had to deal with my own conscious second guessing my every move, but I had to deal with all these skeptics in my world that were cheering on those negative thoughts, feelings, and visions. I would sit and think to myself, "Shanell, what are you doing? Why would you tap into your rent money to start a business with no financial guarantee? You ain't about that life." I felt as if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. My heart was pounding fiercely once the reality of my decision set in. Instead of imagining myself relaxing on the beach with an umbrella above my head and a little decorative one in my cup, sitting with my future husband by my side as we watched the kids play Marco Polo in the ocean, I could only imagine what life would be like to live out my blue Chevy Trailblazer with 3 clueless and curious kids asking, "Mommy, why are we parked under a bridge? Why can't we go home?" It's hard enough as a parent to imagine having to respond to these difficult questions, but to look my kids in the eyes while holding back tears of defeat and pain, I could only imagine responding with the truth, because mommy's pride wouldn't let me ask for help, and mommy's fear wouldn't let me be great. Checkpoint. Do you know what it's like to have so much potential, and because you don't believe enough in yourself, it becomes kind of hard to play full out? Yes or no? I felt like a failure, and all of my thoughts were pointing towards my being a failure. Consequently, my divine power to create gave me the power to create a feared reality through my thoughts. I became the physical image of my thoughts. I would do all the things only a failure would do. For instance, I would set unrealistic goals while not putting in any real effort to get things done. I'd hop from one company to the next, doing the same thing and expecting a different result every single time. I was insane. It wasn't until I was introduced to personal development and the law of attraction that everything started to make sense. The law of attraction implies the belief that focusing on a thought or intention can render negative or positive results. When negative thoughts dominate your way of thinking, you'll only attract more of what you don't want, the negative. Conversely, when positive thoughts dominate your way of thinking, you'll only attract more of what you do want, the positive. When some people think of the law of attraction, they think of it as something that is not of God. Unequivocally, it is expressed that those who believe in the law of attraction do not believe in God. However, that is not true. I believe the law of attraction is the power vested in us by the Creator to allow us to live out our greatest potential. Being exposed to this helped me to realize just how deep my spiritual imbalance went. I had no sense of direction in what to believe, but the one thing that I knew to be true from experience was that the intentions I set always came to pass. During my spiritual awakening, I learned to meditate. Meditation and the study of the law of attraction is what brought me closer to my spiritual side. It allowed me to become spiritually centered within myself and to focus more on the positives instead of the negatives. I challenge you to apply these three keys in your life: think, feel, and imagine. But always keep in mind, whatever you think, you become. Whatever you feel, you attract. And whatever you imagine, you create. Finding your spiritual balance means to officially realize we are not of this world. We are merely natural spiritual beings having a human experience. Now that we've completed our reading from our personal development book, it's time for us to go ahead and move on to the Elite Phoenix Strategic Life Planning Workbook. Let's turn to page 21 of our Elite Phoenix Strategic Life Planning Workbook. You will find this under Week 1, Day 1. The first question states, what are my religious beliefs? Take a moment to check off whichever one of these religious beliefs apply to you. The next question is, why did I choose this belief? Remember, it's all about being honest, so select the one that best represents your reason for choosing this particular belief. Just like it's important to know what you're doing, it's also important to know why you're doing it. The same applies to your religious and spiritual beliefs. When you are aware of your what and why, you are one step closer to developing a solid foundation. If you've been forced into a belief through family tradition, it's possible to find yourself always searching. If this is you, there is a way to find the appropriate path which better suits your spirit. Below is a checklist of things you can do to find your spiritual center and practice getting and staying connected. Option number 1 states, get clear on which religious beliefs or spirituality your spirit connects with. If religion is your thing, but you find yourself questioning your beliefs, it's not a bad idea to start focusing more on your spirituality than on a precise religion. Don't allow your confusion to stop you from pursuing a higher level of spiritual enlightenment. Once you've established your own spiritual connection, you can then decide which religion best fits your spirit. There are so many different religions and spiritual paths in the world. Although they are all different in their own way, they all share one common purpose. They're geared towards bringing out the good in everyone. However, if your spirit is happy with being spiritual and not religious, don't force religious beliefs. The point is to become spiritually connected and aligned. Personally, I find the spiritual approach destroys confusion because there's no box and no boundaries. Not to mention, spirituality is in direct correlation to the oneness that is in all of us. There is no division nor separation, only unity. Option number 2 states, get yourself a spiritual mentor. Spiritual mentors are a big help. They are knowledgeable on spiritual awareness, growth, and can also help guide you on the path to enlightenment. If you are someone who has chosen the path that requires you to attend church, then you can find someone from the church in which your spirit connects with to mentor you and help to feed your spirit. Option number 3 states, surround yourself with individuals who share similar beliefs. If you've chosen to practice a religion, then attending a church wouldn't be a bad idea. It will help to keep you grounded in your faith. If you've chosen to practice spirituality over religion, you can develop your own group of friends who share the same interests. They can help keep you engulfed in the culture of your spiritual journey. This does not mean to alienate yourself from those who don't share the same beliefs, for it is important to always respect the beliefs of others. The fourth option states, create a dedicated space within your home to meditate, pray, or read something spiritual that's in tune with your spirit. This space is where you will go to release, to heal, and to replenish yourself. When you walk out from this special place, you walk out with the intentions of leaving everything that weighed you down there. The key in all of this is to take your time to pay more attention to the intuitive voice inside of you. Allow it to steer you in the right direction. Do not ignore it. Do not get it confused with the family's traditional belief system. Develop your own connection through opening yourself up. Now that we've answered the questions, it's time for us to get into our activating action step of the day. Today's activating action step is to create a dedicated space within your home where you can go to meditate, pray, or read something that's in tune with your spirit for at least 15 minutes. You can make this space an empty space, or you can decorate it however you like. Once you've done so, you want to pray or meditate with the intentions to release and ban all negative energies from the space. Upon completion, your space is ready for use. If you are unsure what to do in this space once you've gotten it ready, simply start by sitting quietly in the space. No matter what thoughts come to mind, make the conscious effort to not become emotionally attached to them. Just sit there or lay down and relax. If you have kids or teenagers, you can teach them how to create their own space. Make it a family affair. You guys can have fun creating together. They can use their space to relax or calm themselves down when they're frustrated. Additionally, now that they have their own personal space, it will be easier for everyone to come up with their own rules. For example, no disturbing each other when they're in their dedicated space. Parents, this will also be a great time to teach your children how to pray and or meditate. The results from this activity alone is amazing. Activating action step of the week. You are also required to check off each of these items from your checklist on the previous page by the end of this week. Take your time and establish your belief system. If you are already firm in your beliefs, that's awesome. Simply ensure you've completed everything else on your checklist. That completes today's Dypm task, and I'll see you tomorrow.